This is Lewisburg on the shores of Lake Pontchartrain, but many residents of Louisiana probably don't know it exists due to its close proximity to the much larger town of Mandeville. The Okolapisa native tribe called this area home, as well as another tribe called Mogulacha. Mogulacha is thought to mean people from the other side, and their language was Muskogean. It's very closely related to the Chickasaw and Choctaw, which are also Muskogean languages. They would maintain perpetual fires, burning in 2 villages at their temples that were decorated with animal carvings like possums, which they called Chocoacha. Some sources I found said that the Mogulacha could have been the same tribe as Tangipahoa, but at some point Mogulacha was used to identify many tribes in the area, like the Kinapisa and Okolapisa. The Mogulacha would settle here on the high ground of Lake Pontchartrain, and they made use of the bountiful fish and shrimp. When Pierre Le Moyne d'Iberville arrived here in 1699, the chief greeted them wearing a blue serge coat that was given to him years before by Henri de Tonty when he and La Salle were exploring the area. At this time, the tribe had about 180 to 250 warriors defending nearly 1,200 people combined with the Kinapisa people. These 2 tribes would be extinct the following year after the Bayugula tribe massacred them both. Today, Lewisburg is immediately to the left of the Causeway Bridge if you're driving north, but the first land grant was given to a guy named Lieutenant John Jones in 1767. The namesake of the town actually stems from Meriwether Lewis, aka Lewis of Lewis and Clark. You might have heard of him. Meriwether Lewis had a nephew named Joshua Lewis, who was appointed to the Supreme Court of the Territory of Orleans in 1806. Joshua would run for governor of Louisiana in 1815, but lost to Jacques Villers. He would then buy land on the North Shore to retire. Now, it's believed that he wanted to get away from the city of New Orleans after a few yellow fever outbreaks, but it's not really known exactly why he chose to come here specifically. He would eventually die in 1833, and his heirs would name his tract of land Lewisburg after him. They divided the land into lots after getting it surveyed and began selling them off. When the Civil War came to Louisiana, Lewisburg saw active combat. The area was plundered by marauders, and the docks and landings were all burned by the Confederates in order to stall Union advancements. A Union vessel called the Gray Cloud traversed the waters around Lewisburg and exchanged gunfire with Confederate forces. It even shot a cannonball at a home in Madisonville. Now, the Gray Cloud anchored off of the shoreline right here, and a company of troops got in a small boat to get on land. Once they got here, they searched the area for a Confederate camp in the woods, but found it completely deserted with nothing left to plunder. 2 years later, in May of 1864, another Union boat called the Stockdale made her way towards Lewisburg. The destination was Madisonville via the Chafuncta River, but Lieutenant Thomas Edwards learned of a Confederate plan to capture the Stockdale. 6 boats were waiting to capture the vessel, but were inevitably defeated without achieving their goal. After the war ended, the lumber boom came to Lewisburg, with a large sawmill being built right where the Causeway toll booth stands today. There was a pond right behind the sawmill where lumber was soaked long enough to get to the right moisture point for production. That pond is still very visible to the right of the bridge if you're heading north. A railroad bridge was then proposed that would have connected New Orleans to the North Shore via Lewisburg, and it would take passengers all the way to Meridian, Mississippi, and then to New York. This would never come to fruition, though, as the railroad was eventually built over the Wrigley's Pass and passed through Slidell and Pearl River, which was then called Hallu. Lewisburg would get direct access to New Orleans almost 100 years later in the form of the Causeway, aka the longest bridge over water continuously in the world. Yes, it is. Please just use Google if you don't believe me. One of the main things to check out in Lewisburg is the famous Seven Sisters oak tree. This thing is massive. So massive, in fact, that for years people thought it was actually several individual trees growing together. Federal foresters came to inspect the oak tree in 1976 and found it to have a single root system. It measures about 57 feet high with over 153 feet of limb spread. Astoundingly, the Seven Sisters oak is said to be between 500 to 1,000 years old, which means it has seen the history of Louisiana from early indigenous life to modern times. This oak tree was inducted into the Live Oak Society and was awarded the distinction of being the society president because of its size and age. We couldn't bring you this information without your support on Patreon, and we'd like to thank all of those who have already contributed and encourage anyone watching this video right now to consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/Louisiana Dread. For more Louisiana history, horror, folklore, and culture, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'm Kyle Crosby, and this is Louisiana Dread Quick History.